digital age where online communication has become the norm, internet users are increasingly becoming victims of cyber attacks. And South Africans are said to be topping the list of victims. Bonita Suckling is just one of the latest victims. Her email hacked and her world turned upside down. The public benefit organization helping others in honor of her son who died of cancer also destroyed.
My reputation is at stake, but unfortunately I've had to close my public benefit organisation down, which means that I'm unable to offer any form of assistance to desperate families in rural areas that rely on me every single month. I cannot transfer any funds, I cannot pay any medical bills. There's absolutely nothing I can do to assist these families right now.
And experts paint a worrying picture of the trend.
It's claimed to have surpassed any other form of illegal money making, illegal arms dealing, illegal drug trafficking. All those things are now second and third to cybercrime.
SABC News tracked down a hacker. He was once convicted of stealing a large chunk of a major South African company's database.
The best feeling in life is to prove to people to do what they say you cannot do. All right? So I made several attempts prior to my hacking attempt to alert the individuals of their security flaws, through telephones, through email, to show them that there are security vulnerabilities and the potential exploits and how it can be exploited from that point on. Those went unnoticed. So the next logical step is to show them that it can be done.
Now claiming to be a changed man, he says there are simply no systems in place to extensively curb the problem.
You can find under certain categories of cybercrime that there could well be a decrease in the number of incidents, but that the value in terms of the prejudice increase tremendously.
South Africa is set to tighten legislation around computer crime with the publication of a draft cyber bill. It seeks to introduce a range of new offences with explicit penalties for phishing attacks, distributing malware and committing identity fraud. Chriselda Lewis, SABC News in Johannesburg.
All right, we're going to take the story further now, and you saw him in the insert. He is Professor Basie van Solms, a research professor in the Academy for Computer Sciences and Software Engineering at the University of Johannesburg. Professor, thank you very, very much for joining us here in studio. You're not alone, because we do have Brian Dube as well. He's the spokesperson for the Minister of State Security, and he joins us from our parliamentary studios. Brian, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Leanne, and good morning, Professor.
Hi, Brian.
So let's have a look at perhaps one of the most recent stories. Now, in the news, we saw that 8.5 million rand was stolen from the Road Traffic Management Corporation by hackers. Perhaps I should start off with you, Professor. How bad is the situation in South Africa? I mean, these stories that we're hearing, we seem to be hearing them more and more often.
I think the big problem in South Africa is that we're not forced to report cybercrime. No big companies or corporations are actually compulsory on a compulsory purpose to report the crime. So what we see is very much the ears of the animal. I think it's bigger than we think because of that specific reason. But that's Africa in general, and Southern Africa and South Africa is seen as a hotbed for cybercrime. Excuse me, that's a fact. That's really happening. I think some interesting things are happening in South Africa, but that we are confronted with a big problem, that is a fact.
Yeah. So, okay, it is a big problem, and I suppose the question should be, Brian, what is government doing about it? We do know it's a problem. What are the things that we have in place to prevent it?
Indeed, and it is a major challenge that government has identified. You'll recall that as early as 2012, government did pass a national cyber security framework which seeks to identify areas that government must come close to and ensure that we have better regulations in place, ensure that we have structures in place that deal with this matter, ensure that indeed we can take the necessary steps to prevent these things from happening. Since then, Leanne, even this year, you'll recall that the Minister of State Security in his budget vote speech identified cybersecurity as a major priority this year. Already we have had engagements with a wide range of stakeholders, including academia, business, and others, to ensure that indeed, as a country, we can all of us talk on the same hymn book, as it were, so that we can prevent these things from happening. So it is indeed a major priority area, and government is working very much hard on these matters.
Yeah. I mean, Professor, we hear that, regulations put in place, structures being put in place, all of this in the attempt to try and prevent it from happening. Is it working, though? That's the question we need to ask. Is everything that's in place currently working, or are we seeing that the number of hackers are growing in South Africa?
No, I'll definitely say it's not working. I've heard what Brian says, and Brian is quite correct. The government has really moved in the last year or so about cybercrime. But the problem in South Africa are twofold. The one is we haven't got the capacity. We haven't got the cybersecurity skills and expertise that we need to implement what government is going to put on the table. And secondly, we haven't got the awareness amongst the users. The people, school children, learners, they don't understand the risk of surfing in cyberspace. So the new regulations and the new cybercrime bill addresses the issue of national cybersecurity awareness and national cybersecurity skills development. But we won't be able to implement that very interesting new bill if we haven't got the skills. South Africa has a massive challenge in front of it in terms of developing the relevant skills and making the end user aware of the risks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the question for you, Brian. Skills, the lack of skills to implement all these incredible things that we have written on paper, but to implement it. What are we doing about that in terms of skills shortage?
Indeed, the issue of skills shortage is an issue which, again, we have highlighted as government. Indeed, we have also spoken to and done a lot of work with our BRICS partners to try and see how we can capacitate our own people. Already there's a lot of programs that we've enrolled in terms of ensuring that those who work in the system, for instance, including judicial officers and other experts, have gone out to receive this particular training, and this is an ongoing program that we are going to be involved with. We've also continuing to run specific seminars, specific conferences, where again we say, together with the public sector, what can we do to raise this matter of training, ensure that we have the requisite capacities in place to deal with these matters. And I think it's important to underscore the fact that cybersecurity and cybercrime in particular, these are new manifestations that are coming up as technology evolves, and it is important that as one of the leading economies in the continent, we are also at the relevant level to be able to deal with these matters, and that is why we are making all these interventions that we are making together with private sector, together with individuals, because indeed, Professor is correct that cyber security and cybercrime is an issue which affects individuals, affect companies, affect government. That is why indeed there is even the Department of Telecommunications, which is leading the involvement of private sector, involvement of public sector, to ensure that we roll out awareness messages. And I'm sure before the end of the year, the department will be announcing what plans are there to take this work forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we need to start wrapping this up. But Professor, how do hackers get our information? I mean, how do they do what they do? Because, you know, all of us do these days. I mean, I never go into a bank anymore. Everything I do is online, and that is, you know, through my banking. All my details are there. Everything is here on my phone as well. So, how do we stop ourselves from falling victim to this? Is it possible? And how do they get this information?
Well, firstly, it's not possible to stop it. You will never eliminate cybercrime. That's a fact. It is a risk we'll have to live with as time goes on. Secondly, how do they get your information? Very often through doing stupid things, to be plain about it. You react to a message or an email saying you won a prize. You click on an attachment and your device is infected with malicious software. Now suddenly the bad guy who has infected your machine can get your logon information, he can control every keystroke that you make. So the fact is that if we don't understand the risks, don't open an email, don't download an app from an app store that you don't know is really a genuine app store. Because the app that you download, this nice thing that will do something very nice to you, may be infected with the malware that the cyber criminal wants to have on your mobile, so that he can do whatever he wants, because he can now control you. He can put on the camera, he can see where you are, he can do whatever he wants. So be careful in terms of how you operate in cyberspace. Don't trust it. It's the Wild West out there.
Yeah, don't trust anything. I know this is a huge issue, but I think we've touched the surface of it, and the message here is just be vigilant. Don't be stupid out there and reply to these emails and these SMSs that you've won 100 million rand and reply to this login attempt and all of these things. You know which bank you're with, and you know what is right and what's wrong. Professor, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us here.
Thank you very much, and good luck. Bye, Brian.
Yeah, Brian, thank you very much as well for giving us government stance and to tell us exactly what's happening.
Thank you.
Brian Dube, of course, is the spokesperson for the Minister of State Security, and Basie Solms is a professor at the University of Johannesburg. Let's take a break. We'll see you after this. Stay tuned.